There comes a moment in every connection where words become almost irrelevant. You don't need them to say it. You don't need a label. You feel it. You sense it in the way their eyes hold yours just a second longer. You notice it when their walls, once ironclad, suddenly have a door cracked open, just for you. And here's the truth: if an avoidant is doing these things, they've already let you in. They may not admit it, they may not be ready to say, "I'm yours," but in their heart, they already are. Avoidants live in a world of caution. They've built fortresses to protect their heart, not because they don't feel deeply, but because they feel too deeply. But when they begin to act differently, when their patterns shift, that's your signal. It's not about chasing their words, it's about reading their actions. And today, I'm going to give you 8 undeniable signs that you've already crossed the line from someone they know to someone they've chosen, even if they're still keeping it a secret. If you recognize even half of these, you are already in a relationship with them, whether they're brave enough to name it or not. When an avoidant lets you into their private world, it is far more than a casual gesture. It's a quiet, almost invisible declaration that you matter to them on a level they rarely allow anyone to reach. Avoidants are wired to protect their inner sanctum with everything they have. This isn't just about physical space like their apartment, their desk, or their bedroom. It's about their emotional space. The thoughts they guard, the routines they keep hidden, the little quirks and preferences they never share. To most people, they offer only the surface. But when they let you in, even in the smallest way, you've crossed a boundary they once swore would remain locked. It might happen slowly. One day they casually invite you over, not for a grand dinner or an event, but just to hang out. On the surface, it looks ordinary, but for them, it's monumental, because their space isn't just where they live, it's where they recharge, where they feel safe, where they escape from the world. Inviting you in means you're no longer considered a threat to that safety. You've become part of it. You might notice how they show you things they don't show others. Their favorite old book with torn pages, a playlist they've never shared with anyone, a half-finished project that means something to them but is deeply personal. These aren't just objects, they're extensions of their identity. To hand them to you even briefly is to trust that you won't misuse or misunderstand them. And it's not only about physical access. Sometimes letting you into their private world is purely emotional. They might open up about what they do when they're alone, what they dream about when they can't sleep, or what scares them deep down. These aren't conversations they hand out freely. Every word they share is carefully measured, except with you. With you, they start to let the guard down without even realizing it. For an avoidant, this is intimacy in its rawest form. They're not big on flowery declarations or dramatic gestures. Instead, they show love by giving you a backstage pass to their life. They may never put it into words, but when you're allowed behind the walls they've spent years building, it means they've made a choice. You're not just someone they like, you've become someone they trust enough to risk being seen. And for them, that's everything. When an avoidant begins to initiate contact more than ever before, you are witnessing a shift in their internal battle with closeness. Avoidants are not naturally inclined to reach out. Their instinct is to maintain distance, to protect their independence, to avoid anything that might feel like dependency. Reaching out for them often feels risky because every message, every call, every "how are you" is an emotional investment. And emotional investment is precisely what they've spent their lives guarding so fiercely. So when you notice that they're the ones texting you first, calling just to check in, or sending you a link to something they think you'd like, it's not random. It's a subtle but powerful sign that you're no longer just an option in their world. You're becoming a fixture. The shift may start small, a good morning here, a funny meme there, an unprompted update about their day. But in the mind of an avoidant, each of these moments is a step across an internal line they rarely cross. They're not just reaching out to fill time, they're making space for you in their life. Every time they pick up their phone to contact you without you initiating first, they're fighting against the voice inside them that says, "Don't get too close." It's their way of saying, "I want you here, even when I don't have to have you here." And for someone whose default setting is self-preservation, that's monumental. You might also notice that they start initiating in ways that aren't purely conversational. Maybe they ask you to join them for something they wouldn't normally share, grabbing coffee before work, attending a small event, or going on a short trip. Each of these invitations is them letting the connection expand beyond the boundaries they used to keep tight. For an avoidant, initiating contact isn't about casual communication, it's about surrendering little pieces of control. And control for them is everything. They control when they talk, how they connect, and who gets access to their time. So when they voluntarily open that door for you, without you knocking first, it's their way of saying, "I'm thinking about you when you're not here." It's their unspoken admission that you've taken root in their mind and heart in a way they can't easily explain. And for them, that's already a deeper commitment than they're comfortable with, yet they're making it anyway. When an avoidant begins to share pieces of their past, you are stepping into one of the most guarded territories of their soul. For them, history is not just a collection of memories, it's a vault containing the very reasons they became avoidant in the first place. Inside are the experiences, heartbreaks, betrayals, and vulnerabilities that shaped their protective walls. They don't open that vault easily, and they certainly don't hand over the key to just anyone. So when they start to let you in on fragments of their past, it is far more than storytelling. It is a silent act of trust. At first, it might seem subtle. They might drop a small detail about their childhood, a passing comment about a mistake they made years ago, or a brief mention of someone who once hurt them. To an outsider, it might sound casual, but for them, every word they reveal is carefully chosen, measured against the risk of being misunderstood or judged. If they're telling you, it's because you've proven, through your presence, your patience, and your consistency, that you can be trusted with the fragile parts of them. Sharing their past is also a way for them to test the safety of the bond. They watch how you react. Do you listen without interrupting? Do you validate without pity? Do you see them differently afterward, or do you continue treating them as the same person you did before? Every reaction you give tells them whether they can continue opening up or whether they need to retreat behind the safety of silence again. The more they talk, the deeper you'll go. You may start hearing about moments that shaped their fears, the relationships that left scars, the family dynamics that taught them to guard their emotions. These are not details they scatter loosely. They are pieces of a puzzle they've kept hidden, often even from themselves. In giving them to you, they're saying, "I want you to understand me in ways the rest of the world never has." And here's the thing. Once an avoidant starts sharing their past, they're not just giving you information, they're letting you see the why behind their behavior. It's their unspoken way of saying, "If you know my story, you'll understand my walls. And if you understand my walls, you'll see why you're the one I'm letting through them." This kind of openness doesn't happen halfway. Once they begin, it means you've crossed into a rare and sacred space, one that only the most significant people in their life will ever enter. When an avoidant remembers the smallest details about you, it's not just a sign of a good memory, it's evidence of deep emotional investment. Avoidants are masters at keeping things surface level when they want to. They can engage in polite conversation, share a laugh, and still remain entirely detached. But when they're invested, their attention sharpens in ways that even they may not fully realize. They notice things you didn't think anyone paid attention to. The way you take your coffee, the brand of pen you prefer, the story you told once about your favorite childhood toy. And they don't just remember, they file it away because, to them, these tiny details are a way of holding on to you without having to say, "I care." You might mention in passing that you're stressed about a meeting next week, and on that day they send a quick text asking how it went. Or you might casually point out your favorite dessert, and a month later they bring it to you without prompting. These moments may seem small, but for someone whose default mode is to avoid emotional entanglement, they are huge. Remembering is a form of connection, and connection is something they only risk when it matters. This kind of attentiveness doesn't come from obligation. It's not about playing a role or ticking a box. It's about genuine curiosity and interest in your world. For an avoidant, Remembering small things is safer than verbal declarations. It's their way of saying, I see you, I hear you, you matter to me, without having to put themselves in the vulnerable position of saying those words out loud. And these details are not random, they are emotional anchors. They hold on to them because they make them feel closer to you without stepping too far outside their comfort zone. Every remembered preference, every noted habit, is a thread they quietly weave into the fabric of your connection. Over time, these little acts of remembering begin to reveal the truth they may never outright confess, that they're paying attention because you've become important to them. In their guarded world, they don't give energy to things they plan to walk away from. So if they're holding on to the tiniest fragments of who you are, it's because they want those fragments close. And for an avoidant, that kind of closeness is already a love language all its own. When an avoidant starts to rely on you, it marks one of the most significant shifts in their internal world. Independence is their armor. They've spent years, sometimes decades, perfecting the art of handling everything alone. They pride themselves on being self-sufficient, on not needing anyone. Because needing people has often led to disappointment, rejection, or loss in their past. To them, depending on someone feels like stepping onto unstable ground. It's risky, unpredictable, and deeply uncomfortable. So if they start leaning on you, even in the smallest ways, you can be certain it's not accidental. It's a sign of trust they rarely give. It may begin subtly. They ask for your opinion on something they'd normally decide alone. They call you when they're stressed, not necessarily for a solution, but just to have you there on the other end of the line. They might ask for your help with a task that they're perfectly capable of doing themselves, but for some reason they'd rather do it with you. These aren't just random moments, they're testing the waters of what it feels like to let someone in without losing control. As this reliance grows, you'll see them sharing their struggles more openly. Maybe they admit when they're having a bad day or when something has upset them, things they would normally keep locked away. It's not that they suddenly can't handle life without you, it's that they've decided they don't want to. And for an avoidant, that distinction is monumental. Even logistical reliance, like trusting you with their schedule, asking you to remind them of something important, or delegating a task to you, carries emotional weight. Because for them, letting someone be involved in the details of their life means inviting that person into their inner circle, where they're vulnerable to disappointment. If they're doing this with you, it means they believe you won't let them down. This reliance isn't a weakness in their eyes. It's a calculated risk. And every time you show up, follow through, or simply be there, you're reinforcing their belief that it's safe to depend on you. Over time, they stop seeing you as just a supportive presence and start viewing you as a quiet but essential part of their stability. For someone who has built their identity around self-reliance, choosing to depend on you is not just a habit, it's an unspoken admission that you've become a part of their foundation. When an avoidant starts making subtle future plans with you, it's one of the clearest signs that they've already begun to see you as a permanent part of their life. Even if they haven't said the words out loud. Avoidants are careful about the future. They don't casually attach people to their long-term vision because that vision is a protected space. Planning ahead with someone means picturing them in a place that was once reserved only for themselves. For someone who values independence above all else, that is no small shift. At first, these plans may not look like much. They might say, "We should try that restaurant sometime," or "Next time we go there, you have to see this spot I love." On the surface, it sounds casual, almost offhand. But underneath, it's a quiet acknowledgement, "I expect you to be here later." They're letting you know in their own way that they're not just thinking about you in the present moment. They're projecting you into their tomorrow. Sometimes, the plans will be even smaller, like holding on to a joke and saying, "We'll laugh about this in a year," or mentioning an event months away that they want to experience with you. Avoidants don't make these kinds of statements with people they're unsure about. They do it when you've earned a level of trust that makes you feel safe to picture in their ongoing life story. This shift often happens quietly because avoidants don't want to draw attention to it. Big declarations make them feel trapped or exposed, so they weave you into the future subtly, almost invisibly, to themselves and to you. They might not even realize that in making these plans, they're building a shared timeline. But emotionally, that's exactly what's happening. The truth is, avoidants think about the future more than they let on. They just usually think about it alone. If they're thinking about it with you, that's a milestone. It means you've moved from being an occasional part of their world to someone whose presence they are starting to rely on in ways that feel safe and comforting. Even if the words relationship or commitment never come up, these quiet plans are their version of saying, I'm not going anywhere and I don't want you to either. When an avoidance body language begins to soften around you, it's one of the most telling indicators that their guard is lowering in ways they might never verbalize. Avoidants are highly protective of their physical presence. Their posture, eye contact, and proximity are all subtle shields they use to maintain a safe distance from others. These shields are rarely dropped, especially in moments of emotional connection. But when they start leaning in instead of leaning away, when their shoulders relax in your presence, when their eyes meet yours and linger just a little longer, it's not just comfort you're seeing, it's trust. You may notice that at first, their body language is reserved, even closed off, arms crossed, sitting at a slight angle, maintaining a safe amount of space. This isn't about rudeness, it's about self-protection. For them, physical openness feels just as vulnerable as emotional openness. But as their feelings grow, so does their willingness to let you closer. Their stance may shift to face you fully, they may allow accidental brushes of touch without pulling back. And they may even start initiating light contact themselves, a hand on your back, a playful nudge, a lingering handshake. Eye contact is especially significant. Avoidants often find prolonged eye contact uncomfortable because it feels too intimate, too revealing. If they're holding your gaze, especially during meaningful conversations, it's because they've decided you're safe enough to see them without the mask. That steady look is their silent way of saying, I'm here with you fully. Even their tone of voice can change, softer, warmer, more attuned to you. Their laughter might become more relaxed, less guarded. They might lean in when you speak, not because they can't hear you, but because they genuinely want to be closer. All of these are unconscious cues that they are letting their body speak the truth their words still can't. These physical shifts are powerful because they bypass logic and defenses. The body reveals what the mind tries to hide. And with an avoidant, softened body language is never an accident. It's a natural response to feeling emotionally safe. If you've reached the point where they no longer flinch at closeness, but instead welcome it, you've entered a place in their life very few people ever do. Their posture, their gaze, their nearness, they're all telling you the same thing. You've become my comfort zone. When an avoidant begins to protect the connection you share, it's one of the strongest indications that they've already claimed you in their heart, even if they haven't said it outright. Avoidants aren't known for fighting for relationships. If something feels unsafe, overwhelming, or too demanding, their instinct is usually to pull away, retreating into the comfort of emotional distance. But when they choose to protect the bond instead of abandoning it, it means they've shifted from seeing it as a risk to seeing it as something worth keeping, worth guarding, worth fighting for. This protection doesn't always show up in dramatic or obvious ways. Sometimes it's in small, almost invisible acts, like changing the subject when someone speaks negatively about you or stepping in to help you without making a big deal out of it. Other times, it's more direct, standing up for you when you're misunderstood, making sure your needs are considered in decisions, or quietly removing people or situations from their life that could harm what you two have. These are not just protective instincts. They are investments of emotional energy that avoidants don't make unless you mean more to them than they'll openly admit. You might notice that they start to become more mindful of how their actions affect you. They might think twice before making choices that could hurt your feelings or create unnecessary distance. They may even check in after disagreements, not necessarily to apologize in grand terms, but to make sure the connection hasn't been damaged. For someone who has historically valued personal freedom over emotional closeness, this kind of care is a massive shift. Sometimes, their protection shows up in planning, making sure you're comfortable in social situations, subtly keeping you close in unfamiliar environments, or anticipating your needs before you voice them. This isn't about control, it's about preserving something that has become important to them. It's their quiet way of saying, I want this to last, and perhaps the most telling part is that they will protect the connection even from themselves. They'll begin to catch their own avoidant impulses, moments when they'd normally withdraw, and instead they'll choose to stay engaged. That decision is not easy for them, but it's deliberate. Because once an avoidant decides you're worth protecting, they're no longer just in a situation with you. They're in it for you. And that speaks louder than any label or confession ever could. The truth about avoidance is that their love is rarely announced with grand declarations or public gestures. It is built quietly, brick by brick, through small actions that speak volumes if you know how to see them. The signs we've explored, letting you into their private world, initiating contact, sharing their past, remembering the smallest details, relying on you, making subtle future plans, softening their body language, and protecting the connection, are not random. They are deliberate shifts in behavior that an avoidant does not make lightly. Each one represents a step outside their comfort zone, a crack in the armor they've spent years constructing, and an unspoken invitation into a part of themselves they rarely share. When you start to recognize these signs, you realize something important: their feelings for you are already deeply rooted, even if they don't voice them. Avoidants often struggle with the language of intimacy because words feel too binding, too risky. Instead, they speak in actions. They weave their care into the fabric of daily interactions, often without realizing how obvious it is to someone who's paying attention. For them, allowing closeness is an act of courage, and if they're showing you these behaviors, you've already become a rare exception in their world. It's easy to misunderstand an avoidance pace or their reluctance to label the relationship. Many people see it as disinterest or emotional coldness, when in reality, it's often the opposite. They feel so deeply that the idea of losing it terrifies them. This is why their love grows in the shadows before it ever steps into the light. They want to be sure, absolutely sure, that you are safe, that you won't shatter the trust they've cautiously extended. By the time these signs appear, you're already a fixture in their life, even if they haven't called you partner or love yet. What's most remarkable is that these changes are rarely reversible. Once an avoidant truly lets you in, it's not something they do halfway or temporarily. They may still have moments of retreat, but they will return because now there's a part of them that feels anchored in you. You've become their safe place in a world that has often felt unpredictable and unsafe. And for someone who has spent their life relying only on themselves, that safety is priceless. So if you're seeing these signs, stop doubting your place in their heart. You don't need them to make a grand speech or put a label on it for the truth to be real. You've already been chosen. You're already inside their most guarded space. And though they may never say it in the way you expect, their every action is telling you the truth. In their heart, you're already theirs. Thank you for being here and sharing this journey with me today. If this message spoke to you, remember, it's not just about understanding others, it's about valuing yourself in the process. Your presence here means more than you know, and I'm grateful for every second you've spent listening. If you found value in this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so we can keep growing together. Until next time, take care of your heart, protect your peace, and keep moving forward. I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye for now.